Hey, welcome back, fellow scientists. All right, this is it. Last notes of this unit, last notes of this quarter, last notes of this school year. School ends a week from today, next week, Wednesday. So, man, it is flown by. It's been a different year, for sure. Not a year that I would want to redo. But God gives us different trials to strengthen our faith. So yeah, so praise the Lord. Um, we are going to have a review session on Monday. So there's a review guide after you're done watching this video and taking notes. There's a review guide. Go ahead and work on that. And then we are going to have a test, Microsoft Forms test on Tuesday, the last day of class. I know it's not ideal, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. So more about the test at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. So this video, it's kind of the culmination of all of the reproductive system. We're going to bring together anatomy and physiology, and then always in the back of our mind, we're thinking about those stages of development that you watched last class day. So that would be Tuesday, that you watched the last time that we had class. And we're thinking about our appetizer that you did today. When do you think life begins? Because most of these methods of family planning, aka birth control, most of them are no question like totally fine. We're not in any of those stages of development. Most of these are barrier methods that prevent the two gametes from meeting. A couple of these, however, could possibly, raise the specter of there's a fertilized egg, but then it's not allowed to do what it normally does. And so, depending on where you think life begins in those stages of development, it raises some questions that you and your future spouse and probably your MD, OBGYN are probably gonna have to talk and take a serious approach to it. So this lecture right here is kind of why I choose to cover the reproductive system, because you guys are going into adulthood. For some of you, it happens very soon. You're going to graduate and you're going to be adults. You're going to be off on your own, able to make your own choices. For some of you, it's going to be next year. You come back as seniors. Hopefully, you'll take AP biology because it's amazing. But anyways, and then a year after that, then you'll be graduating, you'll be looking for a spouse, and you'll be, possibly getting married and possibly facing these different decisions. So this is just kind of a basis, a bedrock. This is like ground zero. This is level one, right? For those future conversations that you'll be having, potentially with your future spouse, right? Um, as we go through this, know that most of these family planning options would be acceptable to Christians, right? There are some family planning options that are definitely not acceptable to Christians, so like late-term abortions, ultrasound, vacuum abortions, morning after pill, right? I think it's like RUD something or other. Most of those, all of those that I just mentioned, would be unacceptable to Christians. That would be killing an unborn baby. That would be tantamount to murder, right? On that topic, coincidentally, my wife and I just this week watched the movie Unplanned, and man, that is a punch right in the gut. I mean, that is a movie not to be taken lightly. It's rated R. It shows graphic depictions of two different ways to abort a baby. And that's not one of those movies that you go and see for entertainment. It's like if any of you have seen The Passion of the Christ, right? Passion of the Christ depicts Jesus's beatings and torture and death on the cross for our sins, which is a very good thing to keep in mind. It makes us realize how serious our sin is, that our Savior had to go through that for us. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to watch, but it's a kick in the gut. I mean, it's man, I don't know how else to describe it. You couldn't watch those every single day, otherwise an emotional wreck. So unplanned is rated R. So like I'm required to say, ask your parents if you're under 18 before you watch that. But I would recommend that to all of you because it it makes you see how serious abortion is, and yeah, it's it's there. It's a thing, and it's sad, and it should break our hearts every time we drive past a Planned Parenthood or something like that. So anyways, all of these methods are not those methods, right? All of those methods we'd say, no, that's bad. All of these methods are kind of within the pallor of Christianity. So here we go. I kind of arranged this lecture from least invasive to most invasive. Least invasive, we're just like taking temperatures and monitoring cervical fluid. Most invasive is actually surgery, and so we'll get there. So least invasive, taking temperatures, monitoring cervical fluid. It's called natural family planning. Excuse me. Oof. The the joke always goes. I don't know where that came from. The joke always goes, "What do you call couples who use natural family planning?" You call them parents, right? Because it only works 85 to 90% of the time if you practice it perfectly. Because humans are humans, it like actually works about 75% of the time. This is kind of cool in that it's not only a way to prevent pregnancy, right? But this can also be used to achieve pregnancy, right? So if newly married couples are struggling with infertility, this could be one way to kind of work around that, right? So this is how it works. The female, when she gets up every morning, takes her temperature, just has a little thermometer right by the bedside table, puts it in her mouth, records her temperature on this little chart, and then it's actually kind of cool. God made like amazingly wonderful and complicated bodies. You'll see a spike in the temperature right at the time of ovulation. So if pregnancy is not something that the couple has decided that they want to do, then abstain from intercourse while the egg is viable, right? If pregnancy is something that they want to achieve, then have intercourse, and hopefully then a baby will result. So, natural family planning, right? Monitoring your waking temperature, and then also, right? We learned about vagina, cervix, uterus, and we learned that the sperm are deposited into the vagina, and then they have to swim through the cervix and then up into the uterus, and then go find the egg down one of the two fallopian tubes. Hopefully, they're not too male to stop and ask for directions. Anyways, I digress. Sorry, jokes abound. But anyways, so the cervical mucus has to be thin for sperm to actually get through. So most of the month, the cervical mucus is thick. We talked about the ovarian cycle and the menstrual cycle, right? But there's a point during the month where the cervical mucus is thinner. So again, if pregnancy is desired and cervical mucus is thin, then have intercourse. If pregnancy is not desired and cervical mucus is thin, then abstain from intercourse. So that is the least invasive way. That is also the least sure way to to control your fertility or to take charge of your fertility or to actively naturally family plan. Right now, having said that, some people like are okay with this, but they're like, yeah, whatever. We're just gonna have as many kids as God wants us to have, come what may, right? And if that's you, like that's totally fine. I respect that. For me, the idea of having 12 kids running around the house, like I cannot handle that, right? God gave most of us fertility, not all of us, but most of us fertility, and that's something that I think that we should steward, that it's okay that we don't just like absolutely like overload ourselves with way too many children as a couple. So that's that. And then after, so this is another one. I added this last year actually because I was thinking about this, and this is a common thing that after you have a baby and you're breastfeeding, then you can't get pregnant while you're breastfeeding. And so I looked it up, and it actually is true. But there's a couple caveats. Number one is that you have to breastfeed every 4 hours for the first 6 months, and no formula like at all. So that's like clockwork every 4 hours. You're not getting any sleep, not that you would anyways, right? When you do that, studies say that it's 98% effective. In reality, right? 3 hours, 5 hours, sometimes baby doesn't want to eat, sometimes baby wants to eat too much. Like you can't, you cannot control as a parent. You think you can, but you can't. You can't control as a parent when your child wakes up, when your child goes to sleep, when your child is hungry. So in reality, this is not really a good form of birth control. It only lasts 6 months, and then after that, then yeah, the possibility of getting pregnant is back. But it is there. It is a possibility. Yeah, after birth. All right, so that's least invasive, and then kind of next step up or next more invasive are all the barrier methods, right? So barrier methods work very simply. They just prevent the two gametes from meeting. They keep the sperm separated from the egg, right? And some Christians, right, they're like, okay, natural family planning, fine. If you want to do that, great. Barrier methods, like that's illegal. That's of the devil. That's playing God. That's going too far, right? Some Christians are like, no, that's a good way to manage your fertility. So, first, probably most well known barrier method is the male condom. It's supposed to be 98% effective if used perfectly. Because humans are humans and we are all fallible, it's only 85% effective. Also, there are female condoms, right? So, male condom goes over the penis, female condom goes into the vagina and kind of lines the vagina. So 95% effective if used perfectly, because humans are humans, 79% effective. Another barrier method. So these two kind of go together. So diaphragm is kind of like a cup or a cap, right? It's not a menstrual cup that some women use to control bleeding for their periods rather. But it's again a barrier that goes right over the cervix, and it's used to prevent the two gametes from meeting. Usually used in conjunction with spermicide. Now, spermicide does raise the specter of birth defects if a sperm does actually get through and manages to fertilize an egg. Then, and it like spermicide, it kills sperm. But if one of those actually get through, then there's birth defects. Used by itself, spermicide is 85% effective, ideally, right? In reality, 71% effective. When used in conjunction with a diaphragm or with a cervical cap, then it's 94, those two methods together, 94% effective, but in reality, 88% effective. And then last barrier method is called vaginal sponge. It does pretty much the same thing as a diaphragm, except for you don't need spermicide. It's what it is. It just kind of soaks up the sperm, prevents the sperm from getting to the egg. One-time use, right? So diaphragm you can use and then wash and then reuse and wash and reuse. I believe that you have to actually be fitted for a diaphragm, so that would be MD OBGYN. Vaginal sponge 91% effective if used perfectly, 88% effective in reality. All right, so those are the barrier methods. So we had natural family planning, then we had barrier methods, and now we kind of come to the crux, right? So this is where some Christians are like, yep, totally fine. I believe the pill, chemical, hormonal methods are by far the most popular form of birth control out there. But then this also kind of raises the specter of uh, wherever you think life begins, like it's possible if you say that life begins at conception, right? It's possible to have a fertilized egg that then doesn't have the right environment to implant, and some people would say that that's tantamount to abortion. That's the same thing. So this is something that you'll have to talk with your spouse about, talk to a medical doctor about, right? Because here, let me just get into it. So all of these methods regulate hormones. We know with the ovarian cycle, with the menstrual cycle, it's just all controlled by rising and falling levels of hormones. So the chemical, the hormonal methods, they control the hormones for you, And those hormones do three things. They inhibit ovulation, right? So the ovarian cycle, the follicle doesn't develop, doesn't ovulate. The fimbrillae, right, the little end of the fallopian tube, doesn't find it, and it doesn't go through the fallopian tube, right? Thickens cervical fluid so that the sperm can't get through, and causes atrophy, or it causes thinning of the endometrium, so that if those other two things fail, then the fertilized egg doesn't have a good environment to implant. So as you can see, it's the most effective form of birth control. 99% if done perfectly, right? If you take the pill like every single day at the same time, 91% effective because humans are humans. And that 91, even that 99%, but that 91% effective. So that makes me think, and this is like, okay, I'm not an MD, so like ask someone who actually knows, but I have researched this, right? And so if these two things fail, but then there's the third way, right? To me, I believe life begins at conception, and so I believe that raises the specter of, well, is this tantamount to abortion? I believe that the answer that you're going to get from MDs is that if one of these methods, or yeah, if one of these methods doesn't work, then all of these methods are not going to work because there's not enough levels of hormones to control it. So if it can't inhibit ovulation, it's not going to thicken cervical fluid, and it's not going to cause a really, really thin endometrium such that the fertilized egg can't implant, right? And that's great. A lot of Christians use this, not a bad thing, right? But something to kind of consider, something to actually be aware of as you grow up, as you find a spouse, as you try to start a family, or try not to start a family for a little while, right? Something to kind of consider, because yeah, life is precious, life is sacred to God. All right, so you have the pill, right? One pill a day. 3 weeks of the pill has hormones. 1 week of the pill has no hormones. Some people like this because it makes the periods like very regular, and when you're going to be on your period, and it's not a surprise. Some people will take this even if they're not married, just to have kind of regular menstrual cycles. So that's the pill. There's also the ring, the Nuvo ring, I believe it's called. Yep, Nuvara ring. And so that's kind of like a diaphragm. It sits in the same location as a diaphragm, but it's kind of like, you can see it's a flexible jelly-like ring that's infused with hormones that lasts for a certain amount of time. I want to say it's like 1 to 3 months, possibly. 99% effective, 91. It's chemical method, right? So all of these have about the same effectiveness. All right, it's not a barrier because there's not an actual physical barrier between the sperm and the egg, but it's just releasing hormones, and it's controlling the female hormones synthetically, right? You also have the patch, right? So a lot of stuff that we put on our skin actually diffuses in through the bloodstream. This is no different, 99, 91% effective. The implant, so this is implanton or neuroplant, right? So these are implanted usually kind of just like right here on the inside of the arm, right? And this has to be done by an MD, and this can last for up to 5 years. You just set it and forget it. And then, of course, last but not least, we have the shot. So for some reason, I'm not exactly sure why, but this raises to 99 and 94% effective in reality. So this is a shot that you get about every 3 months if you want to manage your fertility that way. If you don't want to get pregnant. Um, yeah, 3 months. Good. Now, you may be wondering, there's not a lot of options for males, right, for birth control yet, right? Like we have the male condom, and that's about it, right? And so people have been talking, and people like in the greater medical community, and people have been talking and say, that's not really fair. And there are some guys out there, they're like, why are we putting all of the burden on controlling whether or not married couples have a baby? Why are we putting all that burden onto the wife, right? Why can't the male step up, and why can't the male do his part? And And the short answer is because medicine is sexist, right? Medicine historically has typically been done by males, right? And so they find female hormones easier to regulate. And they honestly, the male birth control pill, it reduces levels of testosterone so that the process of spermatogenesis doesn't take place, so its sperm's not made. Well, if you're a male, right? You don't want to mess with your testosterone, right? And so that kind of like a lot of people don't really want to do that, and all the other stuff is already out there, and it works just fine. So why in the world would we want to do that, right? But there are conversations, there are clinical trials. It is undergoing testing. The most recent article that I found, I think, was from 2019, and it talked about different clinical trials for the male birth control pill. So it could be possibly coming, and then men, you guys can step up, and you guys can take one for the team. You can serve your wives that way. If again, as a married couple, you choose to control your fertility that way. All right, moving on then. So more invasive again. So we had our natural family planning, then we had our barrier methods, then we have the chemical hormonal, which to me is kind of the most I don't know, the most kind of gray area, right, between acceptable and non-acceptable. More invasive then we have intrauterine devices or IUDs. So this is kind of a combination between a barrier method and a hormone method. So two different types of IUDs. We have a copper IUD, right? The IUD is placed inside the uterus by a medical professional. Usually, this can only be placed inside the uterus after child number one is born, right? Yeah, usually it's just there's not enough space in the cervix to actually get this placed, right? So if the IUD is made of copper, as some IUDs are. Turns out sperm don't like copper for whatever reason, and so they'll actually like swim away from the copper, right? Because they're chemically sensitive. That's how they know like where the egg is, as they follow chemical signals, right? So they'll swim away from the copper. Also, this is a foreign object inside the human body, so that's going to activate an immune response, and so there will be more white blood cells in the uterus. And as we saw in the fertilization video, white blood cells attack sperm because sperm are also foreign invaders into the female human body, and so the immune system of the female is going to recognize those sperm as foreign invaders. Um, they're already there because they recognize the IUD as a foreign invader, and so chances of sperm making it to the egg are less. This is greater than 99% effective, and it's surgically placed and it just stays there. And so there's not really a lot of human error that can happen here. So then we also have a hormonal IUD. So works the exact same as the pill to patch. I think it's good for like 5 years. There's hormones in here. It's not made of copper, so it regulates hormone levels. And this also has the added benefit of activating the immune system, so there's more white blood cells there to kill any sperm that might be there. So that's IUD. That's a little bit more invasive. And then most invasive are surgical methods. So here again, we see where males can step up to the plate and actually contribute to controlling fertility. So we have the vasectomy, right? So we remember we have the testis, and then we have the epididymis, and then we have the vas deferens, and then it winds all the way around, and then eventually out the body, right? So a vasectomy, ectomy means to cut, right? Excuse me. And so vasectomy is you're cutting the vas deferens, and so it's really easy. It's really accessible, right? Just make a small little incision, obviously done by a medical professional, in the scrotum, and then cut the cord, cut the tube, and then cauterize or tie off the tube. One time in 1,000, these will actually grow back together, and then pregnancy is achieved after the male has a vasectomy. Also, there's a complementary surgery for females, but it's much more invasive. It's actually like real like abdominal surgery. It's not just cutting through like one little layer of skin, right? This is most commonly done if the female's already having a C-section and they're already doing major abdominal surgery, right? As long as they're in there, If the couple doesn't want any more children, then the doctor will go ahead and tie the tubes, right? So different ways to tie the tubes. You can band it, right? Pinch it off, cut it and cauterize it, right? Kind of like with a lightsaber, like zoom, right? And then, or just like the Vase d'Efrons, you could cut and then you could tie. 3 to 5 times out of 1,000, the egg actually manages to get through these different methods. Um, and if, oh, that's right. And then like normally, right, with the vasectomy, so the testicles are still producing sperm, but they don't have anywhere to go, and so they just kind of sit and wait and eventually die, and then get resorbed, right? And then same thing with the female, they'll still gonna ovulate. The fimbrillae are still gonna find the little, the ovulation site from the ovary, but then it's gonna travel down, but then it's gonna hit the roadblock, and it's only viable for 24 hours. And so then the eggs just gonna kind of die and kind of get resorbed and recycled by the body. And then last but not least, Esure, I'm sorry, I don't think I spelled that right, but I don't have my pen available because I'm just using the mouse. So just ignore that, forget about that. Esure is permanent method of sterilization for females, surgically placed little spring or kind of wire, little corkscrew looking like thing, actually kind of like meets with and kind of creates a wound in the fallopian tube. And then the fallopian tube responds by growing more tissue and repairing that wound, and then creating scar tissue. And so basically, that's like a permanent like tissue blockade of flesh, of tissue, so that the egg can't get through, can't travel from the ovary down the fallopian tube. Sperm can't get up in the fallopian tube to meet the egg. So 99.3% effective for that method. And I believe, yep, that is it. So that's kind of like level one. That's ground zero for as you think about, going to college, as you think about getting married, as you think about maybe starting a family and controlling your fertility. Again, some people have it, some people don't. If you're like an ultra marathoner, if you're a female and you're an ultra marathoner and you have a really 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 low body fat, you're not gonna have periods. You're not gonna be fertile. Yeah, you're not gonna have to manage your fertility because the way that God has made our amazingly incredible bodies, it's just it's not gonna be an issue. So, anyways, that's it for our topic for our discussion about the reproductive system. Now, I promised more information about the test. So here we go. If you're a junior, review guide Monday, review session Monday, test Tuesday, right? And then I will see you next year in AP Biology, hopefully. If you're a senior, Mr. Wells sent out an email saying that if at all possible, that he's requesting that teachers make either Thursday or Friday, whichever day you have class, your last academic day. So I said to myself, you know what? That sounds good. So if you're a senior, you are done, right? I would love to see your faces right now. I would love to give you a high five as you exit the classroom, and you guys have the tradition of running down the hall and running around the circle and screaming on your way out the door, and that's amazing. I would love to hang out at graduation parties with you guys and and by the way, once you graduate, you are allowed to call teachers by their first names, right? So you could say, "Hey, John, what's up? You want a soda?" And I'd be like, "Yes, I would love a soda. That would be amazing." Right? But that's not gonna happen, unfortunately. So the best that I can do is to exempt you from the very last test of the year. So you're welcome. Right. So this has been Mr. Leo. Today we learned about the different methods of family planning, and hopefully made you think a little bit deeper about those different methods and the repercussions of those different methods. If you're a junior, I will see you on the flip side. If you are a senior, goodbye and Godspeed.